Where are you at on taxi squad? Memphis Young, the ability to stash players on a non-active roster in dynasty leagues, keep them there for a couple of years. It became very popular about 5 years ago to add taxi squad to stash rookies that you weren't necessarily going to have any use for in year one. What's the state of the state? Because I've seen a lot of leagues that I'm in go away from taxi squads.
I see it both ways. I am a taxi squad guy. The taxi squad gives the person who does the work a reward. If you're willing to listen to a show like this or, my show or any show that talks about these guys, especially starting in January, you deserve a reward to be able to stash these potential hidden gems on your roster. I think there should be a limit. I think if you're in a 12-person league, you should have anywhere from a 3 to a 5-person taxi. I'm in a couple.
Not enough.
Yeah, but I'm trying to think. That's 36 to 60 guys.
I interrupted your flow here, but
you're good.
The number of taxi spots should match the number of rounds in your rookie draft.
I have never heard that, but I will co-sign that right now.
For obvious reasons, right?
Yeah, because if you're going deeper in the rookie draft, you should be able to go deeper into the UDFA / taxi squad guys. And I'm in one league where we have like up to 15
taxi spots.
15 taxi spots across 12 GMs. And you just see where, and then the downside to too much taxi is like when camp starts becoming fun and there's this guy that you've never heard of that breaks out on social media and you go to look and he's already rostered. And it stinks, and it stinks. So I like your thought of the number of taxi spots equal the number of rounds in your rookie draft, and that should be 3 to 5. I think we're in agreement there. Is that where you're at with taxi squads? You got to reward the guys who do the work,
right? So the people that don't want, and by the way, a taxi squad, for anyone watching that doesn't know, it's like the NFL has practice squad, right? In Dynasty fantasy football, we have taxi squad. And again, it's a place when you draft rookies in Dynasty to put them there. They don't count on your active roster. And usually, for sake of argument, you can keep them there for their rookie season and maybe one more. And the idea is that you have these players that they could be something in 2-3 years, but they're not right now. They just need a little bit of NFL seasoning. And then what's the point of having a 4-round rookie draft if the guy you draft in the 4th round, you have to cut in week 4 anyway? So if you could stash him away on a shelf, take a look in 2 years and then make some hard decisions. So that is why. So if you have 5 guys, and the idea is maybe people would say like, oh, your 1st-round pick, that should be on your active roster, Memphis. But so many times you trade away your 1st pick, you accumulate a couple 4ths, a couple 5ths. So you might have 5 or 6 guys you accumulate in the rookie draft that you really don't want to keep on your active roster.
100%. And what I like to do with my taxi squads is I like to start looking at those roster cloggers that really have no business on your roster anymore. And it's time to cut bait on, some of these older guys you've held on. I was actually Jeremy McNichol is like, I saw him not only on a taxi squad, I saw him on a team's depth chart. But those are the kind of guys, just older guys. It's like if you never used a player in your roster one time last year and he's just there collecting dust, get rid of him.
McNichols wasn't bad, though. He actually was useful.
Yeah, when Eckler got hurt, he did have a game. But I'm just using him as an example. I'm picking on poor Jeremy McNichols. And I said McNichols on purpose. That wasn't a Freudian slip or anything. But guys like that, guys that you're not using because – you want to be able to use your taxi squad in one of 2 ways. You and I talked about this the other day. One of 2 ways. Either you're a contender and you're hoping one of these guys breaks out at some point early, middle of the season, and then you can potentially plug him into an injury, to a hole created by injury on your team as you're trying to hunt down this dynasty championship. Or you took a swing at some of these guys. They still get the same opportunity to play, and now you can trade these guys that maybe you got as a UDFA or a 5th round or a 4th round rookie pick, and you can flip it for a second. The name I hit you with in the pre-show meeting was Isaac Guerendo.
Yeah.
Guy who last year in rookie drafts went dirt cheap due to all the injuries to Jordan Mason, Christian McCaffrey. All of a sudden, Dynasty Fantasy Playoffs, there's Isaac Guerendo. Today's show is about looking for the next Isaac Guerendo that we can plug into our lineups or flip in about 4 months.
Yeah, or Another thing that we often talk about offline, we love talking about Dynasty fantasy football. Sometimes I forget Memphis if we're on the show or off the show, but it's not even about flipping them sometimes because it's hard to do. You can do it, but there's only a couple teams that will be open to that. Is getting a guy like Khalil Herbert a couple years ago. You drafted him in the 5th round of your rookie draft, right? You sat him on your taxi for 2 years. In year 3, he was good enough because he showed a little spark, and he was on the Bears at the time, and David Montgomery had a week 12 injury. You plugged Herbert in. Herbert had 15 or 18 fantasy points. It got you through the week. Now, he didn't have much utility after that, but you drafted him 2 years before that in the 5th round. You probably wouldn't have been able to keep him, except you have him on your taxi squad. He's a life preserver when you need him. So there's 2 ways where taxi is valuable. It's that flip, like you said, and the other part is the life preserver in a random week 12 game where it's a must win. How many times you get questions from fantasy football enthusiasts saying, hey, it's a must win week. Every week's a must win week.
Well, and one of the biggest hits that I've ever had doing this was James Robinson. I was taking James Robinson everywhere after the 2020 rookie season.
The running back on the Jaguars.
The former running back of the Jaguars actually I think it was either an Achilles or a lower leg injury that really derailed his career because he wasn't a great athlete coming out. This is a guy who had 2 RB1 seasons before the injury. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a guy dirt cheap that if all the and again, it's the odds are not probable, but it's always possible. I'm looking for the next possible guy to help, because that's where you build dynasty wealth is getting these guys, letting them become a quote unquote thing, and then try to package them. We'll talk more about that later in the show. And we'll try to package them off and to get into some more stable dynasty players.
All right. So we've explained what the taxi squad is. We've gone over our philosophies of it. Just one more question before we get into some of these players, Memphis, of specific guys we're stashing and why. Is there an advantage to stashing certain positions? Do you prefer to stash running backs, wide receivers, tight ends, or no? It's it doesn't matter. If you think the guy's got upside, you're stashing them. What's optimal here?
Optimal is running back because it's such an injury-prone position, and I don't want to beat up on the running back position more than the NFL and the world has, but it's
I think Memphis froze.
It's a pretty replaceable position. Plenty of Saquon Barkleys and Jahmyr Gibbses of the world, and those guys are quote unquote irreplaceable. But so many of these guys, an Isaiah Pacheco goes out, we plug in. Who was the blonde-headed kid?
Oh, Carson Steele.
Yeah, Carson, and all of a sudden he's doing something. So I tend to lean running backs. If it's a super flex, I tend to leave every super flex rookie draft with at least 1 QB. It may be because the same case, you're looking for the next Brock Purdy if you get lucky. So, but then wide receiver is a little bit harder. With wide receiver, the draft capital and the talent really seem to dictate it. If you look at day 2 and day 1 wide receivers, they tend to have a higher hit rate. You'll get the occasional 4th, 5th, and I've got some of those guys on the list. But for me, first tier is always going to be running backs. Then in a super flex, it's going to be quarterbacks. Then I'll pick and choose pass catchers, tight ends, wide receivers from there.
All right. So I think the most obvious stash or rookie taxi squad stash that we want to talk about here is the running back on the Dallas Cowboys that was drafted in the 5th round, Jaden Blue. Okay. We've wanted Dallas to draft a running back for years. They finally do want to get one in the 5th round. They signed Javonte Williams, who nobody loves. I mean, he's going in the 9th round of redraft. So he's there. Miles Sanders is on the depth chart. Not too scary. Is Blue your number 1 taxi squad stash?
He's my number 2. So for the good folks of the RotoWire audience, I would not show up on Alan's program and to talk to you people without doing work. Now I went to Our Lads. Our Lads it's like an aggregation. They have all of the teams.
It's a depth chart. Yeah. I mean, by the way, RotoWire does have depth charts. So we got
RotoWire does have depth charts. Shame on me for not using RotoWire, but per Our Lads, Jaden Blue is RB2 on the Cowboys already listed right now today. You can go there right now, 516. You can go to that website, Our Lads, Dallas Cowboys, boom, Jaden Blue. This is the spot. This is the spot that We wanted Quinshawn Judkins to go to. We wanted O'Marion Hampton to go to. We wanted everybody to go to this spot because we saw a guy like Rico Dowdle last year perform very highly in this position. Do I think Javonte Williams is going to be the starter? Of course I do. But is Javonte Williams the athlete that he was coming out of college? No, the injuries have taken a toll. Speaking of the injuries, I hate to put the injury prone label on somebody, but he does get injured. And the barrier to entry, that was like one of my determining factors, is the barrier to starting reps is very thin between Jaden Blue and meaningful fantasy points. I'm surprised he's not went higher. I think a lot of people assume he's the third stringer behind Williams and Miles Sanders. I don't think Miles Sanders is much of a anything anymore. I would not be surprised if Blue has a good rookie mini camp and then a good training camp if Sanders is on this roster come week one. What do you think? I mean, you brought him up as your lead guy.
I just think he's the one that most people are talking about that, I've seen him go in the late second round of rookie drafts for all the reasons we talked about, the opportunities there. And it reminds me a lot of like Tony Pollard, who was drafted in like day 2 or day 3, 4th round for the Dallas Cowboys, was a little jammed up behind Zeke Elliott, didn't really show that upside until Zeke was gone. And then obviously he skyrocketed there. And in Dynasty, we don't even care about the production. Obviously we do in season, but there was an opportunity to sell Tony Pollard, who you got in the mid-second round in your rookie drafts for a first-round pick, plus probably a first and a second. So, or players that you had more confidence in. So Blue reminds me a lot of that in a sense, where he's, day 3 pick, not a lot behind him. He goes mostly in the 3rd round of rookie Superflex drafts. And do you have a problem with somebody? Do you think it's a little too rich to take him in like the, ahead of like maybe like Tyler Shook, who's going to be a starting quarterback? I mean, that would be pushing him up because that's that 208, 209 range in Dynasty rookie drafts. That's where you're getting a starting quarterback for the Saints, possibly.
I think now that the Carr news has been out there for a bit, I would like to see that difference between where was Shuck going prior to the Carr news and where has that came up now. But he would be in that range. I have no problem with him being in that range because the players that are there now, it's a lot of wide receivers or other guys that we're going to be talking about on this list. I'm not just drafting the player. I'm drafting the opportunity in the offense.
Shook, by the way, Memphis, Shook is at an ADP is at 24 overall in rookie drafts, and Blue is at 29. So exactly what we just talked about. 29 is 305.
That feels like a bargain to get a guy who's a hamstring injury away from meaningful reps for what has historically been one of the better offenses in the NFL. Not great, not Lions, not whatever, but a really, really good offense.
Let me just see where he went. I'm in a RotoWire Dynasty draft right now, rookie draft. And Blue, I think he went a little bit earlier than, let's see. Oh, no, he went 302 in my draft. So it's right around what I said. And Shook actually fell in this draft, which is, crazy town to me. Actually, no, he went, Shook went 211. So it's right in line with what I said. All right, man. You said that Jaden Blue was your number 2. So who's your best rookie stash for your taxi squad?
For me, you have to pull the ADP data for me, but Woody Marks.
Oh yeah.
He and the reason why is I would say, what would you think? Like 80% of leagues right now are PPR, and he was a wide receiver, really slick pass catcher out of the backfield, and then you can take that little attribute. And everything that we said about Javonte Williams, you can say it about Joe Mixon. Now, Joe Mixon's had a better career, but Joe Mixon has played a lot of football between 2017 and 2025. And if you pull up his game logs last year, he had 101 yards in week 13. And then the next 4 games, 23, 57, 26, 23.
Who are you talking about? That's Mixon.
That's Joe Mixon.
So you're saying Mixon fell off a cliff at the end.
He really fell off at the end. Really, and then against Kansas City, he came around and had 88 yards. Against the Chargers, he had 106.
I mean, to be expected, right? He had a
he's
huge
30 years old.
Yeah.
He's 30, and nothing against Joe Mixon. If you had Joe Mixon, if you drafted Joe Mixon in 2017, He is the thing that you hope every first-round pick you ever make becomes. A guy who gives you 8 years of relevance at a really tough position. Yes, please. But again, he's 30.
He outlasted Dalvin Cook, who he's drafted with.
Absolutely.
And wasn't Fournette in that draft too?
He outlasted Leonard Fournette. The 2017 class is the unicorn of running back classes of all time. But yeah, with Woody Marks, I like the pass catching. I like the opportunity. I think he's going to have a role anyway. And it's going to be a pretty good offense. They continue to add to it. So that's why it's not a huge gap between Woody and Jaden Blue.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to take Woody.
Right. Well, you can't get them both. You can only get one, right? Because you only have one pick.
Where you're going to get them.
Yeah. Marks in my RotoWire draft went later than he normally goes. He went at 402. He was going in the 5th round of early drafts, Memphis. So you're on to something there. I know he's moved up into the 3rd round solidly, like any time in the 3rd round. Like sometimes in these early rookie drafts that you have that are right after the NFL draft, you get like these amazing. Let's see, you got someone here. Memphis on RotoWire. This is such a treat this morning. All right, Jamie. Cool. People like that you're here. So with Woody Marks, like sometimes you get these amazing deals and sometimes just like, I cannot believe I made that pick when you look back, because we get educated and we change our takes as the time moves on. I was in the 5th round of an early rookie draft, Memphis, and I was like the 411. And I was deciding between Woody Marks and Ty Felton, who's going to be the 4th wide receiver on Minnesota. And I had just gotten off a podcast with Eric Vanek, and he got me all hyped up about Ty Felton. And I made the stupid pick, and I literally regretted it the minute after, because obviously Marks went the next pick. Marks has had hype. I am sick to my stomach, right? And by the way, I also have Joe Mixon on that roster, so it's double whammy. I just, so, and then I haven't been able to get Marks because his hype keeps going up. I think he is, for good reason, the number 1 taxi squad stash. Now, Dameon Pierce is on there. We're not too worried about him. He's already been tried, and failed a little bit. Marks does something very different than the rest of them. So I think that's a really good taxi squad stash. Give me who you have number 3 on that list. If you have Marks and Blue as your 1-2.
DJ Giddens, who's on the Indianapolis Colts, an electric athlete. One of the favorites of our buddy Cody Carpentier. Love the athlete. What Todd McShay called him, the human glitch. And I love Jonathan Taylor. I think when healthy, Jonathan Taylor is a top 4 or 5 running back in the entire league. If you were to put everybody in the same simulation over and over again, and it's like, we're going to give Jonathan Taylor a year on the Eagles and Saquon Barkley a year and all your best running backs, I think Jonathan Taylor would have as good of a year as anybody possible, but he's also fought injuries, and not just injuries, lower body injuries, which suck the lifeblood out of a running back. We know the running back position has a high injury rate, and I don't think there's a lot in front of him in the way of Khalil Herbert. You mentioned Khalil Herbert earlier in the show. I think DJ Giddens in Shane Steichen's offense, you're probably going to end up getting somewhere like in that Kenneth Gainwell range, but you have a lot of upside because I think he'll get some use, but I think the injury potential with Jonathan Taylor in front of him gives him a quick shot at relevance even in year 1. Yeah. And Jonathan Taylor, very expensive, very, very expensive. And he may not be there in a year but luckily the Colts don't have a quarterback, so you don't have to figure out where you're coming up with that $50 million.
Yeah. By the way, Adam Hahn in the chat making me feel better. We were just talking a minute ago about how I passed on Woody Marks for Ty Felton, and Adam says Ty Felton's a dog, though. See, admittedly, I don't know much about Ty Felton other than what really smart people told me, which is why I took him blindly. And I'm trusting you, Adam. If this fails, it's your fault. Yeah, back to DJ Giddens. Our own Jim Coventry at RotoWire did a little scouting on him. And what I like about Jim's scouting report is he doesn't watch any college football, or very little. He just goes straight, so he has no biases, right? So he just watches the tape. He doesn't do YouTube highlights. He watches the tape, does a real evaluation. Now, it's just his opinion, but he came out pre-draft and loved Giddens, and he, all the football reasons why. And like you said, Giddens is in a really good spot with Taylor, who usually, if you were going to set an under over on Taylor games, 13.5 sounds about right. 12.5. Healthy
right
games.
That's about perfect in a 17-game season.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, okay. So that's potentially 2 or 3 DJ Giddens clarity games. Because not only do you want these guys on your roster to stash, you want the ultimate nuts is having them, being able to elevate them from taxi to put them in your lineup when you're desperate in week 9 for a win. Memphis, before we continue here, just want to let everybody know the RotoWire Fantasy Football Dynasty podcast is brought to you by Circa out in Las Vegas, the ultimate draft experience. Now, you've been out to Circa, or you've been out to Vegas. Let's start with that, right?
Oh, many times. I can co-sign on Circa Swim. Check it out.
Yeah, Circa has this ultimate draft experience, Memphis, where you could sign up for it. I'll put the links in the video description below. And you go out there, they pick you up in a limousine from the airport, bring it to the hotel. You have like a cabana by the pool. You do a draft. We've done it. So this whole experience, it's really good. Now, in the days where we do a lot of drafting online, it is a cool experience to get everyone there. You stay at the Circa. So Circa Stadium Swim, like you referred to, is like the best pool in downtown Las Vegas, probably in all of Vegas.
I didn't want to like step on your promo, but it is the best pool in all of Vegas because it's got like, I don't know, like ginormous TV screens. You're watching every game, golf, baseball, whatever. And it's the pool, and you can play blackjack. It's just, you can
play blackjack in the pool. Yes,
at the pool.
Yep. You can lose money in the pool. No, I was kidding. Actually,
well, you can, it's the get even or get even worse mentality.
Right.
Maybe you just lost that, that Nuggets basketball game. Maybe they didn't cover the spread. And so you can go to the blackjack table and you can get even or even worse.
Yep. You sound like you're speaking from experience. And Memphis, it's like every good gambling story starts the same way. I was up big and then I lost it all, right? Everyone that gambles can certainly feel that one. And also just want to let everybody know right now, RotoWire, we're having a sale, 15% off any RotoWire product. We have all our, rest of season baseball rankings. Already have tons of Dynasty fantasy football content behind the paywall. So just go to rotowire.com and use code ROTO15, ROTO15 at checkout, 15% off any product. Use that code. Okay. Back to our, actually, you know what? We're going to take a short break here, Memphis, for our listening audience. YouTube audience is not going to experience this at all. So we'll be right back in 2 seconds. All right, we're back here with Memphis Young from Player Profiler and the Dynasty Warzone podcast, appointment listing for me. You and Jerry do a great job on that podcast. If you love Dynasty, you guys get deep into the weeds there. We'll talk about that a little bit later, Memphis Young. But I have you on here because I really do appreciate the way you see the game of Dynasty fantasy football. And we're talking about players that you'll regret not stashing. And we've already gone over a couple guys like DJ Giddens, Blue. I mean, you've named the ones that I think are, if you don't know those names already, you got to get them on your taxi squad. Are there any receivers on your list, and where do you have them? Who's the best receiver you think is worth stashing late in your rookie drafts?
Well, it's funny you should ask. The next 2 guys on my list are both wide receivers.
Who are they? Name them both. And then
my first guy is Tory Horton, wide receiver for Seattle. Okay. And then the other guy is Pat Bryant.
Start with Bryant though, because I want to hear. I've been hearing a lot of hype on Pat Bryant, who was drafted by the Broncos.
Yes, sir. Not super great draft capital. I mean, he was 3rd rounder, so not horrible. Day 2, we talked about day 2 guys. Plenty of great 3rd round wide receivers have come out. Terry McLaurin, Cooper Kupp. Not saying that's what you're getting with Pat Bryant, but 3rd round draft capital is a plus. And then the guys in front of him for starting snaps on the outside as a wide receiver, Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton's going to be the guy there. He's, when healthy, is there a better wide receiver, a more consistent wide receiver too than Cortland Sutton? Very, very underrated guy. But then Marvin Mims. I like Marvin Mims. I liked him coming out of college as a rookie pick. He's really seemed to find his niche as a special teamer. And I would not be surprised that Pat Bryant, fills a role like that possession type wide receiver. For some of you old heads like Alan and I don't want to go as far as to call him the next Marquise Colston for Sean Payton.
Oh, interesting.
But I could see him playing a Marquise Colston-esque role. Not a great athlete. Marquise Colston was a converted tight end or not a big – he was a big guy. Hofstra for my buddy Alan.
Long Island.
Yeah, the New York guy there. But just a good opportunity and a good offense. Accurate quarterback, a quarterback that's not going to steal passing attempts by rushing the ball. I mean, Bo Nix does run a tad, but you get my point. like the offense. I like the coach. I like the opportunity. I like that there's not a lot in front of him. And I like that day 2 draft capital. So that's why he's one of mine.
Yeah. So you mentioned the depth chart here, because that's what we're looking at when we're talking about taxi squad stashes. Guys that may or may not have an immediate opportunity, but once the runway is cleared, we're going to want to activate them and use them in our dynasty lineups. Cortland Sutton, steady as you can get. Marvin Mims really came on, scored 4 touchdowns in the last 2 games in week 17, 18. He's one of my favorite sleeper picks in redraft this year. I've been taking him in like the 10th round. And when I say sleeper, I know everybody knows about Marvin Mims, but just, if he's probably going to out-deliver that ADP. And then Troy Franklin, we didn't mention him. He was last year's 4th round pick. Do you not see him as being in the way of someone like Pat Bryant?
I wouldn't let Troy Franklin wash my truck. I just don't think he's that good. I think he got 4th round draft capital because he was Bo Nix's boy.
Oregon.
They were buds. They played together at Oregon. It's kind of like what Cam Ward's trying to do with Xavier Restrepo, except the Titans didn't have to waste a 4th round pick to take Restrepo. They just got him as a UDFA. I just, between the drops and just everything else with Franklin, I'm out. And they're clearly looking to add offensive pieces to this team.
All right. Well, tell me about Thornton then. Give me the whole thing, because I have to admit, I don't know much about him. I see people in the chat are getting excited for you to talk about Thornton. Pat Bryant's already become a popular taxi squad stash. Most people know about him. If you don't, you're going to have to probably take him he went in the 406 in my RotoWire draft.
All right. Well, I want to make sure we're not confusing Tory Horton with Deontay Thornton.
Oh, okay, Thornton. So who are we talking about here?
I'll start with. I have both on the list. Ironically,
so
I have notes. Which one do you want to do first?
Let me go back to the comments. Let me see.
Sure, I saw Thornton as well.
Yeah. Okay. So someone said Thornton's a nice sleeper, but you were referring to Horton.
Well, we're already on Thornton. That's Deontay Thornton.
Okay, start there. I don't want to confuse the audience.
He is the second stringer for the Raiders. You know what the Raiders lack is speed. At least they used to. And Thornton ran a 4.30 at the combine. Dude is fast. One of the fastest wide receivers to come out of this class. And Jacoby Myers is not that guy. Brock Bowers is not that guy. This is a guy that could easily play himself into a starter's role. And I could see him. I don't want to go, crazy with the comparisons, but like a Darnell Mooney.
By the way, Deontay Thornton on the Raiders, 6'5", 205. That's like a gazelle, man.
Well, that's that fast, big outside. I mean, I don't want to compare anyone to Brian Thomas, but Brian Thomas is a big, tall, fast dude.
Right. That's the ultimate upside. Right.
Yes. You're looking. I mean, hell, he could be DJ Chark, who was no good. Right. I mean, big, tall, fast, athletic. It's not always a recipe for success. But he's got a lot going for him, including that 4th round draft capital. So, I like Deontay Thornton quite a bit. Like, I was shocked to see that he was already listed as a second teamer, and he's the fastest wide receiver on the team. I think those 2 things alone guarantees that he makes the roster and gives him a shot at meaningful snaps. Now, will he get meaningful targets? That's to be determined, because targets are earned. But I think his athleticism will get him time on the field.
Yeah, this is why I started this podcast, Memphis, at RotoWire, is that, I listen to a ton of fantasy football dynasty content, and I would be screaming into my headphones, Memphis, because sometimes the podcasters who I loved were not asking the questions that I had as a consumer of it. So I have guys like you on, I didn't really know about Thornton. I'm going to, maybe I'm so into to some other parts of Dynasty that this fell away. So I've still not, I know a lot of people have had a lot of their drafts. I still have 14 drafts left, 12 drafts left. So where do you suggest taking someone like him? 5th round, I can get him, right?
I've seen drafts where he hasn't been drafted at all.
Okay. So he's 5th round or like a fab guy.
Right, and he played at Tennessee. It's not like he played at Southwest Directional Arkansas State A&T.
It's because they took Jack Besh in the 2nd round, and that's the receiver people want.
I don't think Besh is even getting as much respect as he deserves, but
he's going either, to 208, 209, man.
Exactly. So, but you're either better than or different than. And what Dante Thornton is for the Raiders is he is different than. He is the fast, big-bodied outside wide receiver guy that when a team is double and triple teaming Brock Bowers in the red zone area, he's a guy at his size and athleticism could get open. Again, it's possible versus probable. And this guy has the possibility of being an asset.
All right, cool. And then, if he does have a big game or two, he's either a flip or someone that will count for you in a trade. So you want to talk about Tory Horton, the 22-year-old, 6'2", 196-pounder from Colorado State that's now on the Seattle Seahawks.
I have him listed at 6'3" on Player Profiler, but we'll just agree he's in that 6'2", 6'3" range, about 200 pounds. Tall, lean guy, runs a 4.4. What I like is the only thing between him and meaningful opportunity is Cooper Kupp, who I love Cooper Kupp, but he's older, he's banged up, he doesn't get open the way that he used to, and he wouldn't play the same role as this kid anyway. And then the other guy in his way is Marquez Valdez-Scantling.
Okay, who's, by the way, a good NFL player.
He's a journeyman. He's a journeyman.
He's a professional guy who he's like, at this point, he's like the Frank Gore, the guy who can like block someone else's growth. But Frank Gore's an old timer. Bad comparison. MVS gets playing time. He gets snaps.
Yeah, he's like Nick Westbrook-Akine. He could be that guy. But this kid, again, you have the opportunity. It's a new offense. It's a new quarterback. It's Jackson Smith and Jigba and a lot of we'll see. And again, I would be shamefully wrong if I tried to say this kid was the DK Metcalf replacement, but he's the tall guy who runs fast.
All right.
And again, better than, different than. This kid's different than Cooper Kupp. This kid's different than Jackson Smith and Jigba. And I would not be surprised if he was not able to take that starting job from MVS.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good taxi squad stash. You could probably get him for fab. I mean, you put like on a budget, like 9% of your fab down in a league, and I don't even know if you need that much. That probably assures that you get him after the fifth round is over.
A lot of 4-5 turn. I've seen him going, and I've been collecting a lot of that there. A lot of Horton at that 4-5 turn in 12-team rookie draft. Yeah.
Okay, so if you're in a 3-round or a 4-round, it's fab. If you're in a 5-round, you got to take him. Okay, all right, that's why we're here. And Jordan James, any interest in him, the running back that San Francisco drafted? We talked about Garendo a little bit earlier, and I just kind of threw him out there for you, but I don't know. It seems like just running backs that San Francisco draft are either completely busts or they have some value in season.
Well, the Kyle Shanahan, and it's not for you younger listeners, it's not the Kyle Shanahan offense. It's the Mike Shanahan offense. And Kyle learned from dad. And you can go back to Mike. That offense shortens careers. It creates a lot of injuries. You can just go clear back to when Kyle was with the Washington, then Redskins, now Commanders. And it's always had a lot of running back. This zone blocking running scheme that the Shanahans run. I'm not saying that shortened Terrell Davis's career, but Terrell Davis, Hall of Famer, probably didn't play as long as he should. Christian McCaffrey comes into the season banged up. Love Christian McCaffrey, but he's also 29-30. All of his injuries, for the most part, have been lower body. I do like Isaac Garendo, but he got hurt toward the end of last year as well.
Quickly, too. I mean,
quickly. So to say that this guy may get an opportunity quickly is fair. He is the perfect 5th-round pick. Maybe even a UDFA that maybe you spend up fab for, because you're not just buying the talent, you're buying the offense they're attached to. If you notice that Alan and I aren't recommending a lot of guys on the Jets, a lot of guys on, well, we may get to a Saint or two.
Yeah.
But we're not recommending, you risk it on guys that are on bad offenses. We want to be attached to good offenses because good offenses give us the fantasy points. And that's why I don't mind James at all.
Yeah. All right. That's I had my eye on him as well. I think you have to take him in the 3-4 turn, probably the 4th round. Right. That's probably
he's probably trending up, to be honest, but I've seen him in like the 5th round quite a bit.
We'll come back to it, but like real quick, who do you like on the Saints? Is it Devin Neal?
Yeah, it has to be Devin Neal.
All right. Talk through Devin Neal real quick, because listeners
Sure.
of this podcast know that 30 minutes in, I take a pee break. Like this
Hey,
is
well,
it's part of my contract.
Hey, it's well, we're contractually bound, so do
right.
your thing.
Literally 2 seconds. I'll be right back. Talk through Devin Neal and why you should stash him.
100%. So for me, Devin Neal is pretty simple. I wish Alan could be here, but you know what? I got the pulpit all to myself. I can say this. In a singular season or two, Christian McCaffrey was a better running back than Alvin Kamara, but from their entire career, Alvin Kamara has been a better running back than Christian McCaffrey. But that said, he's also from the class of 2017. He's also going into year 9. He's an older guy, and it's him and it's Kendre Miller. Kendre Miller, we're going to look back at one day and be like, hey, you know, what could have been? He was a really talented running back coming out of TCU, had a knee injury, I think, in like either the semifinals or the national championship game, kind of fell into the doghouse under the Allen administration, the former head coach. And this is the first running back that new head coach and offensive play caller, Kellen Moore, drafted. Again, I was saying that over the course of their career, here's my hot, spicy take, Alan, that for their career, Alvin Kamara has been a better dynasty asset than Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey's had better seasons, like individual seasons, but from a consistency standpoint, that being said, much like Mixon, much like Christian McCaffrey, other guys we've talked about, he's 30, going into his 9th season. He's only got so many more good games. He's also a guy that if that team really flames out, I would not be surprised if he got traded to a contender. And then this new coaching staff might want to see what they have in a guy like Devin Neal, really good athlete, bigger guy, and he is different than Alvin Kamara. I could see him being the hammer in this offense, and I could see Alvin Kamara not wanting to be beat to death on what's going to be a bad team. So for me, Devin Neal, opportunity, a lot of things in his favor. So yeah, Devin Neal's definitely worth drafting.
Good take on the Alvin versus CMC. I like that. Right. It's the more consistent. Devin Neal, 3-4 in my RotoWire draft. That seems about right. If you want him, you're going to have to take him early in the 3rd round. Devin Neal or Jaden Blue? Who do you want on your taxi squad?
Jaden Blue. It's the better. It's the better offense, but it's not horribly that far apart. I mean,
well, they go back to back, so that's why I asked. You can only get one.
If you can only get one, I would rather have Blue. But if you get sniped, quote unquote, sniped on Blue, Devin Neal is not a bad consolation gift.
All right. I want to talk a little bit of tight end action here and some QBs and Superflex worlds, but let's start with tight end. So, you know, the first round tight ends, people don't seem to want them in the, you know, until like the late first round. And I'm talking about Colston Loveland on the Bears, and then, you know, Tyler Warren, who's on Indy. So those guys are, you know, they're going to be premium picks at the 1st and 2nd round. Even getting into like with the Jets drafted Mason Taylor, he goes somewhere in the middle to the late 2nd round. But we're talking about taxi squad stashes. The names that I'm thinking about are your favorite Terrence Ferguson, Turd Ferguson, right? I'm talking about Harold Fannin, who's on the Cleveland Browns. Ferguson's on the Rams. And then Elijah Arroyo, who's on Seattle. And then let's figure, like, for this conversation, a small tight end premium, 1.5. Of those 3, Ferguson, Fannin, Arroyo, first rank them, and then tell me about your favorite stash tight end.
Well, you rank them. It's Ferguson, Fannin, Arroyo.
In that order.
In that order.
That's not consensus, just so you know.
I've never worried about consensus, but with Arroyo, I will even give the listeners a way to be able to go trade for him cheap if you've already had your rookie.
Elijah Arroyo.
Elijah Arroyo of the Seattle Seahawks.
Okay, but he's your number 3 guy.
He's my number 3, but I want to get to him first.
Okay.
He's the guy that you can go to Our Lads, Seattle Seahawks, pull up their depth chart. Take a screenshot of him listed as the 3rd stringer behind Noah Fant and AJ Barner. Send that to the person who drafted Elijah Arroyo and say, hey, your guy's a 3rd stringer. I've been a fan. Let's make a deal. Can I give you a 26th 3rd for him? He's a guy that I want. He's been very impressive in the little OTA mini camp so far. But for me, it's Terrence Ferguson. Do you know? I have a 2-part question for you with Ferguson. All right, per player profiler, where does he rank athletically out of the 2025 tight end class?
Well, you said it like that. So, I mean, you gave me the answer basically. I'm going to say first, only because
He's
you said
second.
it. Like, okay.
He's actually the second most athletic tight end in this class. And where do you remember where he was picked? What number pick was used on him?
Oh my God. Was he a third rounder?
He was the 46th overall player taken in the draft.
God.
He was the 214. And I'll share with you a story that I heard last year is that Sean McVay wanted a tight end for this offense. He was figuring out last year, he was trying to trade up and get into the conversation for Brock Bowers.
And by the way, that's a sore point for me because the Jets passed on Bowers. I mean, that was so obvious to take. They've done this a million times.
Broke your heart.
Yeah, go ahead. Anyway,
you're good. And I know that Tyler Higbee's back. He's the veteran.
32 years old.
32 years old. He's been banged up. I do think he'll be the starter, but I look at messaging. You hear the stories that Sean McVay wanted a tight end last year. He invested the 46th overall pick in this guy. Doesn't mean that he's going to break out in this year, but I just see an opportunity for this kid to, and tight end, so it's such a fickle position anyway, that he's the guy. If you can't get one of the big two, he's the guy I'm getting. And then you mentioned Fannin. The one thing I didn't
real
do,
quick,
sure.
Would you take Ferguson or Mason Taylor if the 80? I know their ADP is like a half a round apart, but you can only have one. And let's say like right now you have a usable tight end, like you have Evan Ingram on your roster, so you're starting him. Who do you want on your dynasty taxi of those two?
All right, I'm going to answer your question. The reason why I didn't put Mason Taylor on this list is
I told you not to include him.
Yeah, but he's going to be a first rounder, so he's going to play. But if I have an Evan Ingram, I'm going to bank on the organization and the coach.
Okay.
I want winners. If the tiebreaker for me is Sean McVay and the LA Rams versus the New York Jets, and I do like their new head coach coming over from the Lions, but yeah. Aaron Glenn's a great guy. But I'm still leaning Ferguson, but that's a very good 1-to-1.
Okay. So now on to Harold Fannin. Cleveland Browns drafted in the third or fourth round? Third round? Third round, listed as second on the depth chart. So he will play in 12 personnel, 2 tight end packages. A great opportunity. I would be looking, and I will be looking for chemistry between him and Shedeur Sanders. Because I don't know what David Njoku's contract looks like, but I don't know that David Njoku is going to be the long-term tight end for the Browns. I could easily see him. I could see them moving on from them the way Jacksonville moved on from Evan Ingram. Mm-hmm. He's still pretty young. He's only like 28, so he's a good tight end. But I think Fannin's the future tight end. This is the perfect guy to put on a taxi squad. Yeah, Fannin had the huge amount of production at Bowling Green. Falls a little bit in the draft because it wasn't like considered a big school. But highly productive, more of a pass catching threat. David Njoku's still there, and look, good player. They don't exactly have like elite level wide receivers. They have Jerry Jeudy, who's fine, right? They have Deontay Johnson, who they signed, who's been a little bit of a mess, and Cedric Tillman, who popped a little bit last year. Interesting player, but had injury, was a former third round pick himself. Anyone else that a threat to catch passes on that roster right now? Dylan Sampson, the rookie running back, maybe. Anyone else?
First of all, you did not give Cedric Tillman enough love. Tillman's a total buy for me. So after this year, all of the years on David Njoku's contract are void years.
Okay.
So they could save up to $10 million by cutting or moving on from David Njoku in the next offseason. And it's great you bring Fannin in and see what he can do as a rookie, mix him in. And Njoku also not the healthiest dude around.
Right.
So the opportunity for Fannin's going to be there. I think Fannin fell in the draft. I think he would have went higher. He was the third pick of the third round. If he hadn't ran a 4.7 40, if he had ran a 4.6, I think he goes day 2. But I think this is a good spot because this is a team that they're just starting to overhaul. They're just starting to overhaul their skill weapons. I think that's why they didn't go wide receiver. They continue to put on the defense. And like for me with the Browns, I'm playing Shedeur Sanders. It's the same thing I said on my show. You remember when Conor McGregor fought Floyd Mayweather?
Yes.
It's a no-lose situation. If you lose, you lost to the greatest boxer of all time. And if you happen to win, you beat the greatest boxer of all time.
Right.
It's the same thing with Shedeur. If he hits, you invested a 5th-round pick and now you've got a starter. And if he doesn't, you just go draft someone next year. It's the easiest. It's the win-win situation.
Yeah, they'll probably. I mean, my guess is they'll start Flacco, and then when the Boo Birds come in, that's when. But here's the other problem: is the Browns drafted Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round. Won't he get the first shot after the Flacco? Or I don't want to say the Flacco failure, but even if Joe Flacco is playing well and the Browns are 1-4, they're gonna go to a change. I would think that Gabriel would get the first chance, but you're saying what matters is Sanders is going to get the last chance.
Yeah, and nothing against Dylan Gabriel. I think he was taken in the 3rd round because the GM Andrew Berry and Stefanski, they didn't want to draft Shedeur. That was the owner coming in saying, "Hey, we're going to draft this guy." And I think they believed that drafting him in the 3rd round would mean they wouldn't draft Shedeur. But guess what? Jimmy Haslam gonna meddle. I think and Shedeur's looked good in camp so far. I know it's OTAs. It's not a whole lot. But I just think you have to see what you got. And maybe you do give Dylan Gabriel 4 or 5 games.
Well, yeah, sometimes it may not be that long of a leash. But hey, if you're watching this video and you enjoy stuff like this, if you're watching on Twitter, if you're watching on YouTube, if you don't mind hitting the like button, that lets us know that you want more content just like this. Happy to do that. Also, if you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, it's time to hit that subscribe button. We're going to be having tons of Dynasty content. We're live here on this podcast every Friday at 10:30 a.m. Few exceptions. Next week, I'm having Addison Hayes on from DLF on a Wednesday. We're going to be going live. I'm excited. I haven't talked to Addison on a podcast. So Addison? Are you familiar with him?
Fun fact, 8 years ago when Jerry and I started the Dynasty Warzone, Addison Hayes was the very first guest we ever had on the Dynasty Warzone. He's good people. It works over at the DLF.
Yep.
One of my wife calls everybody in the fantasy and Dynasty industry my internet friends. One of my internet friends I have met.
Oh, cool.
Addison is a young dude, but he's a very sharp dude. He's been doing this for a long time. I was playing in Dynasty leagues with Addison 9 years ago.
Cool. Well,
he's been at this a long, long time.
Yeah, he'll be on this podcast next week. Anyway, let's talk a second before we finish out with our quarterbacks. Let's talk about, you got the Dynasty Warzone podcast. You guys go live on the Player Profiler Network. Was it 8 o'clock or is it 9 o'clock on Sundays?
It really depends on what time Jerry shows up.
Your
but
co-host.
Jerry Sinclair, my co-host. We're normally live about. You remember TBS when everything started at 8:05 or 7:05? Because of Jerry, we're a TBS podcast. We start at 8:05 on Sunday evenings, live on Player Profiler's main channel. The podcast comes out usually on Wednesdays. Depends on what's in front of us and what's already in the queue, because Player Profiler is literally dropping 1 to 2 awesome podcasts a day. There's a lot of Dynasty, a lot of best ball. Like I said, our spot has been Wednesday mornings. It's been as early as Tuesday, but yeah, that's the thing. That's what we do.
And you can follow Memphis on Twitter, DWZ Memphis.
At DWZ Memphis, and I am not afraid to. I don't put out as many takes as I used to. I found less Twitter's better Twitter, but I put out takes that are mine. Sometimes I rile up kids and the folks on X, but I don't tell you what you want to hear. I tell you what you need to hear.
Yeah, Memphis is a good follow. You're a good follow. So I enjoy you. All right, before we get out of here, Memphis, let's talk about a few quarterbacks in a Superflex world to stash. I mean, we just talked about Shedeur Sanders. I mean, to me, he's an obvious pick in the 2nd round. I just got him in the 4th of the RotoWire Dynasty draft. Nobody wanted him. I agree with you that he's going to get a meaningful shot. It's, in the 4th round, it's an easy pick, but in your draft that you, the listener, you're going to have to take him in the 2nd round, the late 2nd round, maybe early 3rd. So that's the obvious one here. Will Howard has been the guy that I've been. Okay, good. You agree. I see a thumbs up. So Will Howard, Pittsburgh Steelers, 4th round draft pick. You tell me why you think he's a good Superflex stash.
I just like winners. A little story that came out about Will Howard is that he was heading to Pittsburgh after being selected, and he's messaging with the offensive coordinator, "Hey, can you send me the playbook?" And he's not even there yet. And the OC was like, we'll get that to you tomorrow or whenever you get in town. He's like, I'd like to get a jump start on it now. He's a winner. There's a reason why he's done what he's done in college football.
Ohio State, for those who don't watch a lot of college.
Yes, Ohio State national championship. It's not always about measurables and metrics. I like guys who are winners. And I think the kid's a winner. And if for some reason, because I still believe there's a greater than 0% chance that Aaron Rodgers retires and doesn't sign with the Steelers, that this kid could be the starter by week 6. It's going to take a certain, series of events to get that done. But this kid is a winner. He's a good athlete, big kid.
6'4", 230, whatever it is, right?
Yeah, and he's gonna get the opportunity. Can I tell you my favorite, QB? And I'm a sucker. He's not a taxi stash. He's a first rounder in Superflex leagues. It's Jackson Dart.
Yeah,
he won me over. When you see the video the other day where he did the little ball flip,
mm-hmm.
I was like, and it wasn't so much about the ball flip. That's just like that confidence that I know I can do this.
Yeah. No, you bring up Jackson Dart. I think he's the best pick in the first round. You don't get I think we can all agree he's going to be starting at some point in 2025. I mean, this is the Michael Penix, the Bo Nix pick from last year, right? And I'm not saying you're going to get the same outcome, Memphis, but you don't get starting quarterbacks in Superflex rookie drafts this late normally. If he was named the starter today, he'd move up 6 or 7, move up 5 spots in our draft. You're getting him at the 201. You're getting him at the 111. So, yeah, that's an easy pick for me. I would take him over Harvey, the running back on the Broncos. I would take him over Caleb Johnson. Jackson Dart, what a great call out there as we can start to get towards the end here. So, yeah, smart. And you know what? He is a taxi squad stash because you're going to take him. And if Russell Wilson's named the week 1 starter, which we expect, you put him on your taxi squad.
Yeah, and that's the kind of first round pick where he's going. Like if you won a Dynasty championship last year, and it's fair to say that you could have had Sam Darnold. You could have had a lot of guys, Matthew Stafford, Geno Smith, guys who had a great year, and we don't know what Sam Darnold's going to be in 2025. We don't know how many more years. If you're able to get Jackson Dart at that 110, 111, 112 as someone who is in the final 3 of your Dynasty league, and you can take him and you can put him on your taxi squad knowing that you're just investing in the future of your Dynasty roster. So I think he's perfect. It's not a bad year to be a contender. Normally as a contender, and it's the same thing guys did last year with Bo Nix. The difference is Bo Nix paid off right away. This one right here is going to be a bit more of a slow burn.
Right. But Penix was a slow burn though. Same draft spot.
I mean, JJ McCarthy's still a slow burn. I mean, he's going to be starting, but it was a slow burn. So it's not like it's much different than Penix, McCarthy. I mean, obviously we're going to go to one of the best quarterbacks of all time, Patrick Mahomes. It did not hurt him for a year to sit behind Alex Smith. As a matter of fact, I think it actually, I don't know how much credit he would give it as a professional. I think that year behind a guy like Alex Smith is a big part of the reason why Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. Was he ready to be who he is now coming out of Texas Tech?
All accounts were yes.
I don't know. But I do know that like Andy Reid, Sean Payton, a lot of guys were fighting to get up to get that guy. Anyway, long story short.
Wait, hold on. Stick with this for a second here. The Patrick Mahomes thing, because there's a couple good points. Is that they say, oh look, they got all the way to the AFC Championship. Maybe they would have won if they had Patrick Mahomes in there instead of Alex Smith. And the other thing was, someone retweeted the other day. I'm sure you saw this. It was one of the big media outlets had their draft grades after that draft, and they gave the Chiefs a C-, and it like one of the standout write-up parts of the blurb was they got a C- on their draft grade that year because they said Patrick Mahomes would never translate well to the NFL. So draft grades.
Well, that's the stuff about the draft that I love. Like, obviously, we love the picks and I love the stories that come out after. It was that Andy Reid and the Chiefs were putting out disinformation about Patrick Mahomes because they wanted Patrick Mahomes. Yeah. And Sean Payton that same year was trying to get ahead of the Chiefs to get Patrick Mahomes. When really smart, really talented, tenured resume, solid guys like that want to go get a guy, you have to listen. So I like Jackson Dart. I know he's the Gruden thing.
Yep.
With him and the play cadence, he's one of my guys.
Super quick lightning round. You tell me yes, taxi stash for the rookie, or don't want him. Quinn Ewers on the Dolphins, formerly of University of Texas.
Yes, please.
Why? Just one line, because I said no, but why? Yes, please.
How many more concussions can Tua take?
Right. They have Zach Wilson though on the roster.
I mean, it's business for the attractive single mothers in South Florida. Business just picked up. But Quinn Ewers was a former number one quarterback out of his high school class. He's a guy I'd love to see get an opportunity.
Okay. We already talked Dylan Gabriel. How about Riley Leonard? We both said we don't like the Colts quarterbacks. Leonard out of Notre Dame's got some rushing upside. He'll probably start off as the QB3. Is he a taxi squad stash in Superflex?
Yes, I would like to say if, but really when the Colts are 2-6, how much more Daniel Jones and Anthony Richardson can we watch? Let's just see what Riley Leonard has. What you should be doing with these young quarterbacks.
My guy Eric Vanek over at South Harmon put me on Leonard. I've been picking him up. This one's a very obvious one. Jalen Milroe in the second round. You want him stash, or because here's the point with Milroe. We know the rushing upside in Seattle, but if Sam Darnold has a week 3 injury, Drew Lock is going to be the starting quarterback. So you're talking about a QB3 that people are taking in the second round of rookie drafts.
And that's okay if you're taking him in the second round, knowing that it might be a year or two before you get to see him.
Yeah, this is like Hooker all over again from Tennessee, where the Lions took him. I know that was injury related, but
the problem is that it is the same situation. And there was some injury related issues there, but Milroe's getting that Alabama bump. Okay. We saw him at Alabama. He must be good.
All right, we're going to stop there, Memphis. I can go all day with you. We're going to try to keep these things tight. Memphis Young, everybody, round of applause. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Go follow Memphis at DW. It's Dynasty Warzone, so it's DWZ Memphis on Twitter. I'm Alan Seslowsky. We'll be back next week with another Dynasty Fantasy Football podcast.